This part of the presentation takes an in-depth look at the mentor standards, which were designed to provide principles of professional practice and to help outline your role as an instructional mentor. We hope this learning helps to revitalize and deepen your understanding of the mentor standards and how they inform your role as instructional mentors in the Ohio Resident Educator program. This slide lists the categories for each of the 5 mentor standards. The mentor standards included in the mentor toolkit are presented at a glance. For a more comprehensive overview of the mentor standards, including the elements and indicators, please refer to the complete mentor standards for the Ohio Resident Educator program document. Let's take an in-depth look at each standard, beginning with Standard 1. Standard 1. Mentors demonstrate commitment to advance the professional learning and practice of resident educators. The element for Standard 1 states, mentors commit to the roles and responsibilities of mentoring and dedicate themselves to maintaining timely and appropriate communications with resident educators. The following indicators elaborate more on this element. Indicator 1.1. Mentors clearly communicate resident educator program expectations for themselves and for resident educators as defined by state law and school district requirements. Mentors are responsible for helping resident educators understand the purpose of residency. Resident educators should be aware that they are part of a 4-year program and will be responsible for taking the Resident Educator Summative Assessment in Year 3. Mentors should have an awareness of Ohio Revised Code and Ohio Administrative Code to help resident educators understand how the state law and school district requirements impact professional development and licensure. Indicator 1.2. Mentors use research on the developmental needs and concerns of resident educators to guide their communications with resident educators. There is a wealth of research in the educational field related to supporting beginning teachers through induction and mentoring practices. Indicator 1.3. Mentors engage in formal, regular, and ongoing communication to meet the personal and professional needs of resident educators. Regularly scheduled collaborative time is essential to the development and support of resident educators. Every collaborative conversation between mentors and resident educators is a professional development moment. The attitudinal phases shown on the screen reminds us how mentors must tailor support for their resident educators. Mentors must be mindful that resident educators' emotional states and needs will vary greatly as they gain teaching experience. Situations and timing are important factors to consider when communicating with resident educators. Indicator 1.4. Mentors demonstrate strong interpersonal skills, employ relationship building skills, and use effective language tools to facilitate meaningful conversations with resident educators. Mentors should demonstrate strong communication, interpersonal, and relationship skills to meet the professional needs of resident educators. Indicator 1.5. Mentors honor the confidentiality of the mentor-resident educator relationship as it is defined in the context of the Ohio Resident Educator Program and district policies. In your role as mentor, you serve more in the capacity of a coach or advisor rather than that of an evaluator. When communicating with administrators and other evaluators, be mindful that communications that occurred between you and your resident educator should remain confidential. Standard 2. Mentors design and facilitate professional development for resident educators. The element for Standard 2 states, mentors facilitate professional development experiences purposefully designed to meet the identified needs and concerns of the resident educator. The following indicators elaborate more on this element. Indicator 2.1. Mentors apply formative assessment strategies and tools to identify and address the professional development needs and interests of resident educators. Many tools found in the Mentor Toolkit can support you in this process. We will address those tools and application in more detail during Part 3 of this video series. Indicator 2.2. Mentors apply knowledge of the Ohio Academic Content Standards, professional teaching standards, relevant research, and best practices to guide the professional development of resident educators. Standards guide professional practice. Ohio's learning standards, educator standards, and revised professional development standards should be applied by the mentor to guide professional learning of resident educators. Indicator 2.3. Mentors facilitate professional development experiences that promote collaborative inquiry, analysis, and reflection on practice. Professional development experiences should engage resident educators in these processes as they practice and engage in the teaching and learning cycle. Continual reflection between the steps of assess, plan, teach, and revise will lead to a deeper understanding of the teaching practice. Indicator 2.4. Mentors apply professional development strategies consistent with best practices in adult development and learning. Knowles, in 1980, provided one list of adult learning theory and principles. However, you may encounter other elements of adult learning in your own research and studying of teacher development. Getting to know what motivates and interests your resident educator is important. Use that knowledge to your advantage to help the new educator grow as a professional. Indicator 2.5. Mentors use a variety of research-based strategies, resources, and technologies to differentiate professional development for resident educators. For instance, mentoring may be done through a resident educator cohort, through co-teaching, through one-to-one mentoring, or through a combination of these models. You might also encourage the use of video observations of classroom instruction to further support teacher reflection and analysis of practice. Standard 3. Mentors create and foster positive learning environments for resident educators. The element for this standard states, mentors create and foster the development of positive learning environments in which resident educators accelerate professional growth. The following indicators elaborate more on this element. Indicator 3.1. Mentors create trusting, caring, and open environments in which resident educators can build and maintain strong and positive professional relationships. Creating a positive and caring environment is critical to building and maintaining a positive professional relationship between you and your resident educator. You might meet this indicator by providing a designated time and place for ongoing mentoring conversations. Indicator 3.2. Mentors apply knowledge of school and community culture to assist resident educators in being positively socialized into such cultures. Learning the ins and outs of how a school building operates can be overwhelming for beginning teachers. Be sure to explain those processes to your resident educator so they can adjust and feel comfortable in their new setting. As a veteran teacher, you may also have connections with stakeholders in the educational community who are invested in the academic success of the school or district. Introducing your resident educator to various individuals and groups and inviting them to attend after-school meetings or events can help acclimate them to the educational culture. Indicator 3.3. Mentors serve as advocates in their schools and districts for creating supportive environments that enhance resident educators' opportunity for reaching their personal and professional potential. For example, you might organize opportunities for resident educators to observe you or other colleagues teaching. You can also model and support professional reflective practices such as journaling, video recording, analyzing teacher work, and analyzing student work. Indicator 3.4. Mentors promote opportunities to build positive relationships among resident educators, school staff, families, and the community. One way to achieve this is to introduce your resident educator to other staff members and colleagues who they may not generally work with in their grade level or content area. Indicator 3.5. Mentors engage colleagues when the skills or knowledge of another educator is needed to support the professional growth of resident educators. If your resident educator teaches in a different grade level or content area than what you have experienced in your own career, you might enlist the support of other colleagues who have experiences in those grade levels or content area. For example, participating in a cohort or professional learning community provides opportunities for resident educators to work collectively and collaboratively with other resident educators, mentors, and possibly veteran teachers. Standard 4. Mentors support resident educators' instructional and assessment practices. The element for this standard states, mentors advocate for student learning and employ instructional mentoring strategies designed to help resident educators enhance student learning. Let's review each of the indicators for this standard. Indicator 4.1. Mentors value the research-validated connection between teacher performance and student learning by serving as models of data-driven professionals. Mentors should help resident educators see connections and correlations between decisions made for instructional planning and delivery and how those decisions impacted student learning and achievement. Data collection and analysis is not an easy task. Therefore, you should support resident educators in data collection methods that allow for monitoring and evaluating student progress over time. Indicator 4.2. Mentors advocate for student learning as the primary indicator of a resident educator's professional growth. Resident educators need to learn how to monitor their impact on student learning by engaging in analysis of student data to reflect on and make revisions to instructional practices appropriately. You must be able to monitor how your mentoring impacts resident educators' understanding of data-driven decision-making. Indicator 4.3. Mentors support resident educators in using a variety of formative and summative student assessments to drive instruction. As a mentor, you will work with your resident educator to explore various formative and summative assessment methods. Through collaborative conversations, the two of you will be able to critically think, reflect, and analyze which practices supported higher student achievement and make adjustments in instruction accordingly. Indicator 4.4. Mentors assist resident educators with planning lessons that engage students and integrate content standards with effective instructional strategies to meet the needs of diverse learners. Another role you will have as a mentor is to help resident educators reflect and analyze their decision-making process while planning appropriate lessons. For example, teachers should intentionally plan lessons that incorporate effective instructional strategies to support student learning with experiences and activities aligned to learning outcomes. Indicator 4.5. Mentors assist resident educators in creating a positive classroom culture that communicates high expectations. For example, you might share examples of successful classroom management systems, routines and procedures, and transition practices that have worked for you in your own classroom that are appropriate and responsive to classroom and individual students. Indicator 4.6. Mentors develop resident educators' abilities to use student learning data to set instructional goals, self-assess instructional practices, and monitor progress toward those goals. Resident educators are asked to demonstrate on the RESA tasks how they use student learning data to set instructional outcomes, self-assess instructional practices, and monitor student progress toward meeting outcomes. Therefore, it is important that you plan learning experiences for resident educators to engage in these practices through the daily implementation of the teaching and learning cycle. Indicator 4.7. Mentors use assessment data and a variety of coaching strategies to improve the practice of resident educators. Mentors collect assessment data relative to their resident educator in forms such as observations, conversations, or reviewing lesson plans and artifacts. From that data, mentors offer valuable feedback and engage resident educators in a deep analysis of their teaching practice by asking just the right coaching questions. Further information about questions you might ask to prompt resident educator reflection and analysis is provided in Part 3 of this video series. Standard 5. Mentors develop as leaders and learners through professional growth. The element for this standard states, mentors serve as models of professionalism in their development as professional educators. The following indicators elaborate more on this element. Indicator 5.1. Mentors model self-reflection and self-assessment as hallmarks of professionalism. Instructional mentoring is a professional practice that requires ongoing learning. Indicator 5.2. Mentors as continuous learners acknowledge fallibility as a quality fundamental to personal and professional growth. Everyone is capable of making errors. Mentors support resident educators in taking responsible risks, persisting, and having humility and pride when encountering the unknown about the teaching profession. Indicator 5.3. Mentors demonstrate congruency between their mentoring words and actions. Mentors set an example for resident educators through their words and actions. Indicator 5.4. Mentors respect the diversity of school staff and the community. Indicator 5.5. Mentors assume leadership roles at the school, district, state, or national levels and in professional organizations. Mentoring provides a pathway for mentors to discover that they are teacher leaders. As you continue to learn and grow, we encourage you to seek other leadership opportunities. Now that we have explored the mentor standards in depth, take some time to self-assess your learning from Part 1 on this check for understanding before beginning Part 2.